I would like to welcome you all to this stakeholders webinar. This is part of the Horizon 2020 INFINITECH project, where we are working together with public institutions, with banks, with private technology companies around topics on the financial space. We're actually discussing, and we have many pilots working on very, very interesting projects and pilot programs. And today, our goal is to see how they fit into the SDG goals of the UN and how the business ethics around that projects work. So we will be presenting all pilots. We are cluster 2, so we will be presenting 4 pilots today, and they will be giving you some insights on how they are tackling these goals. The idea is to create this open space so we can discuss, exchange ideas and solutions, and how we can help shape the future of digital finance in a much more impactful way. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you our speaker, which he's a very expert person on labor market data analysis, on policy research. He's working with the Greek Social Innovation Center. Mr. Dimitris Panopoulos, welcome.
Thank you for your warm welcoming, Theo. Thank you everybody for attending. It's nice to blend the technology with ethics and digitalization. It's the three together with the environmental aspect. It's I think the 4 most hot words in this era. With the word environment, I also include the energy issues deriving from the last events and the last facts. I'm just sharing now my presentation, not to save a little time, let's say. So wait a minute. So I'm Dimitris Panopoulos. I'm the head of the Labor Market Analysis Unit here in the Ministry of Labor. And today we're discussing, let's say, the SDGs connection to the business ethics and to the attempts for transforming digitally operations and units and organizational models. What is a fact during the times that we are now facing is the combination of the digital creations, the robots, the avatars, together with the human creativity and human skills. So the combination of that is not only described in a theoretical way by some academians like Malone, the writer and the professor on MIT Malone, speaking about the convergence in the interconnection between machines and people, but with the more notional approach on that, which is that digital transformation is not only and not predominantly about technology. It has characteristics and aspects that are called technological, but mainly this transformation is an approach that has to do with the creativity, the change on the mindset of people and humanity in general. So transformation, in contrast to the other revolutions, technical and industrial revolutions, have to do more about the human creativity and the human intelligence. And this is something that goes for us together with digital literacy aspect. Facts, numbers and data on this aspect, especially for Greece and especially for the not only the citizens but also the companies side, the private sector company side and the third sector company side, show and reveal that we have in general a moderate level of digital literacy if we have aggregated data on the whole, mainly, mostly, probably small companies in Greece do not have this characteristic as something being prioritized among others. This is something that came in forth during and after the COVID, we could say. And mainly it was in a disruptive way and not as a systematic approach. So a first thing that has to do with the business and the citizens' ethics is the improving of the level of digital literacy throughout the labor market, and not only, I would say. But this digital literacy, as we said before, has to do with including and integrating a growth mindset, a changing mindset, a friendly stance and behavior against change. So changing the words, changing the things and the activities is something that creates omni-channel improvements, we could say, in many aspects. Getting out of our safety box, in experimenting and using experimentation in many sectors of economy, using different methods and innovative ways, disrupting the way that we are operating or cooperating with communities, firms, enterprises, people generally, and being exposed to a certain level of risk and not known environments is something that altogether is described by the sense of growth mindset. And this is something that also has to do with digital literacy, as long as digital literacy is included, with the ethics. Ethics now and business ethics. It's a way of, it's an intangible, it's a term describing, including intangible things and fundamentals. Mainly it is associated, the term is associated with the sense of morality, of responsibility, of clarity, of trust. A small parenthesis here, digital trust is another very overwhelming issue coming into forth because in, let's say, the factual interactions, we could create trust by seeing each other, by operating together, by contributing together to a project, or having an interaction. Now we are interacting through devices, and digital trust is something that's now, that I think the last 2-3 years have started being integrated in the way we work and think. Together with that, we have the changing of this behavior towards more digital trustful methodologies and ways. And all these create some choices for us, which in advance create a more close relationship, despite the fact that we are operating through machines and tools. And so these words bring to us some other interconnected words, like justice, like fairness, like honesty, integrity, which in advance complement all the content of the word ethics. Ethics in a technical way, and referring to companies, it's something that's been described and analyzed, and I have the luck to participate, to have participated in such schemes in European Commission also. European Commission created expert groups in some domains, some tech domains, crucial for the development of societies and the development of the services or the tools that have been available to people and citizens. So we created there the ethic guidelines for trustworthy AI. As we said before, trust and clarity and integrity are huge words for us, huge buzzwords with very deep content on that. And then together with that, we had also moving towards the creation and the establishment of a framework for ethics, an assessment list, which is the applied, we could say, level of the guidelines, that is the theoretical level on that. How are these ethics applied to the everyday operations and activities of people, firms, organizations, etc.? Ethics have certain fields of applied interactions. One, for example, has to do with the privacy or the non-privacy in case of the open data and the data governance system. It has to do with transparency. It has to be connected with including diversity, with fostering non-discrimination and fairness tactics, as well as giving a very big emphasis on the social and environmental aspects. And these social and environmental aspects do not finish up to the labor conditions, up to the working conditions only, but expand further than that to the family or to the friendship frameworks, etc., etc. Together with the responsibility, we have another word being presented here, which is accountability, which is something that for Greece, it has been an issue, creating mechanisms of accountability, which gives the clarity and the trust, which creates and builds trust as a result. So ethics have a technical and financial also pillar aspect for Europe and their member states and their citizens. As described as conclusions of a series of surveys, we have that make data available and create a bigger level of open data is something that could include and could foster and forward this ethical side of operations. Increase investment on that is another one. Work together and boost competitiveness through the value chain that's created through team working. Maximize use of that, and of course use and show and indicate and nurture talent is something that help across the scope of being more ethical in the way we work. There are certain types of ethics. Ethics types have to do with the compliance. Imagine here that we can discuss about the GDPR and not only, and the very sensitive data, personal data, and the level of, let's say, in more generic terms, personal data, the value-based codes that emphasize, for example, the responsible conduct and focus together with operating and servicing the private sector companies, but at the same time maximizing the public good, the public benefit from the activities of the third and the private sector, and also have to do with the professionalism, with the way we behave and the way we act in our working environments. So these three types are more described as the general categories of that. But the thing is that ethics and the business behaviors are inspired and are affected by the culture. By the culture, we mean by this phrase, we mean the culture that it's nurtured inside the company, inside the team, a unit. And this stance of the enterprises have to do with these circles, these content circles that we can see in this slide. For example, ethics are connected and are produced through empowering emotional engagement levels. Last surveys, global interval, the survey of McKinsey, the research of PVC, I think it was 2 months ago, had deployed, had shown that emotional commitment and emotional intelligence within the enterprises make a very good boost, give a boost to the productivity of the teams and the results on that, together with involving necessary stakeholders. In case of an activity or a CSR activity that's connected with the SDGs goals, means that communities are taken into consideration and beliefs and needs of communities are taken into the strategic design of these CSR actions, as well as mutual understanding, the goal of the units or the communities. There should be always a balance between the benefit of a bigger community and the small needs of smaller communities, of smaller teams. And then we have, as a result, some tenets on the ethical trading initiative. For us, it's very important regarding the SDGs to monitor, to keep an eye on, for example, the child labor, mainly the child abuse on labor working in environments. That's something that derives also from the inspections that we have through the inspection body of the Ministry of Labor. A huge issue that was very prominent during COVID was the safe and the health and the healthy issues on the working environments. This is something also connected with the SDGs, up together with others, some that have to do with the working schedules, with the overtime working, things like that. So this is a point that from the technical level of the business ethics, we go to connect them, the ethics I mean, and the content of them, to the social responsibility of the companies, of the workers, of the employers, of all the universe, we could say, of all this ecosystem, I mean. There are some learning goals. There are special and very explicit programs on educating and basically on penetrating information about ethics to not only managers of units or enterprises, but also to executives or to teams that create new innovative results. For example, an R&D unit should also follow the social responsibility fundamental during experimentation, technical or biological or pharmaceutical experimentation. So this is something that springs into the consultation. I would stay on the point 8 in this slide, which says that we should explain the notion of the steward partnership or the goal sharing fundamental that describes how investors are concerned with business ethics. Also, we have a series of surveys and researches indicating that businesses that are citizen-oriented and service a public purpose or a general purpose are proven to be more sustainable in series time, in let's say the last 2 decades. The more a company has circular behavior, green behavior, or expresses a very fundamental social scope, the more possible it is to become more sustainable, because they create what we said before, the trust, the commitment to the users. There are points and there are some signs that not in all fields these two go together hand in hand. There are some divergence on some things. A main difference on the two meanings is that Social responsibility, for example, is more narrow, targeted into a company's social obligations. I mean, the units or the organization itself, while business ethics is in a more aggregate way. We could say that social responsibility is a micro level, and the business ethics is a macro level in a more financial or economic approach. And then we have these 4 boxes that contain all this information. I could stay on, we have, let's say, the socially responsible and the socially irresponsible axis. And together we have the ethical and the unethical axis. And in this certain type of category of coding the enterprises, we have these 4 boxes as a summary. There are more, to be honest, but when they are summarized, they create these 4 boxes. And there is a scale throughout, I think, OECD countries now on the time being within enterprises from public and private data categorized in these 4 boxes. There are many reasons that ethics for us is important, but choosing the most powerful, the most impactful, we could stay on this. And I'm starting from the last one, that employee engagement is what enterprises now call the internal user-centric approach strategy in strategy designing. Smarter companies take and use and create open procedures. In these procedures, employees, not only managers, but employees also contribute to the creation and to the co-design, we could say, of the strategy of the firm. Then these are considered as internal users or customers. So from this point, we jump to the bigger customer satisfactions, because employees there participate as users also. This creates a balance, a smooth balance between the internal and external framework of the company working. And this, of course, this engagement, of course, includes a series of features. One is, for example, the healthy competition, the certified health and safety mechanisms or procedures that a company may use. This means that stakeholders are also considered in the same value of employees, but also each group has a certain type of diversity. And all this helps to create a good CSR, a good public, a good ESG profile, we could say now. Regarding, again, the consumers' rights, of course, the sustainability and the expansion, the scalability of the business. As we said before, we have a very recent research, big research in, I think, 16 countries from PwC, showing that the business with the higher probability to survive is the ones that also, together with the internal scopes, they also serve a social purpose. This has, as a result, to create trust and confidence to managers, and to also, simply we could say, employees that speak for their company. These smart firms and this approach is something that is now being upscaled, use as ambassadors their own employees to show and to promote what they're doing. And this, for example, in the clarity and the diversity is a hinder, is a bottleneck for that diminishes the space for malpractices. All this changed, less or more, probably more for the bigger companies and less up to now for the smaller companies. All this strategic and organizational design, but have enriched the conversation to that with these ingredients. Now design, assess, and implement is the three big categories. Each of them has steps or has procedures in that, in an agile way, though. All these are now used and discussed and consulted, are being in consultation using digital tools for that, design thinking tools, etc., etc. And this brings near, close. This is a bridge, as a writer wrote, between Industry 4, technological innovation, and social innovation. Why is that? Because all this social aspect gets into the core of the business operation, which has economic goals also, but also are streamlined with the environmental obligations of each company. Either it's big, either it's small. And with this, I think I finished, Thodoris and Debbie. And I'm open for questions, discussion, or what.
Thank you very much, Dimitris, for that. I think most of what you just presented to us could be and deserve, I think, a topic on their own. It's like so many different things that we could be discussing for hours and hours. I will keep that. I don't remember the exact words, but I felt something. It's how you use your own employees to promote all these ethics and around your company, and how you contribute and you allow and you give your investors the vision to understand what you're trying to achieve on a social, impactful way, to make sure that you stay relevant. I would say in today's crisis around ESG
and resilient,
topics. Resilience.
To have a greater level of resilience among all these towards all these disruptions. That is a new normality. That from now on we should understand that all these consecutive disruptions is a new normality.
It's a thing, and what we are actually also seeing right now is that there are many tools or services or startups or bigger corporations that try to help you either from a consultancy perspective or giving you access to your data, how you understand your core business values and how these translate into actual value for the society as a whole. And it's very important to understand, and when you start, you build something from scratch, or even if you are an established company, you need to understand how your role contributes to the rest of the world around you, because we are part of a bigger community, and it's very important to have this in our DNA when we have a vision and a strategy. Can I ask you just because you've been working with many different companies around all these things, you've seen things, and what is the biggest challenge that you think corporations are facing towards understanding or showing or working towards this? I will call them the SDGs, which are they cover all the ESG spectrum.
I think that there are two things. One thing is that now we are using techniques or models of distributed workforce. One challenge is to sustain or to render sustainable the common culture and the common consensus. Imagine that units are working remotely now, complete units, I mean with 20 or 30 people, or they're being dispersed geographically in different countries. So a difficult challenge to face is that ways of keeping these fundamentals throughout units that are dispersed geographically and physically. Imagine that there are occasions and facts, if I remember, that units had to be in contact, in physical contact for 2 or 3 years. So one thing is that. The other thing is that it's also a challenge for companies, basically for leaders, either it is in unit level or it is in generic level, to diffuse the notion, the belief that all these changes towards social scopes do not hinder the growth opportunity of the companies. Instead, they are boosting it through creating trust to people and communities. And together with that, they create digital trust also, which is something, which is a term that needs further explanation. But in generic, this pivoting, this social pivoting of the companies, of the bigger companies, and expressing and serving social scopes mainly boost the sustainability and not hinder. What I mean is that we should pass from the era of shareholders to the era of stakeholders. And the fiscal aspect is only one thing of the universe, is one part of the circle. There are many parts together with that contribute also, and maybe more in the way we live, to the resilience of these companies. So this is a difficult point to show to the employees that using or changing your environmental behavior within the company and in the family circle in general helps indeed to create and to promote better conditions for the company and for the society you live in. That's a bigger challenge, I think.
It is, but we're happy enough to see that there are many use cases today that they're actually they started, actually the whole corporation started because of this belief, and now we see that they are flourishing, and they're getting better and better every day, which is an amazing thing to see. Yeah,
they're gaining ground together with the greenwashing, I say, the SDGs.
Happens, yes.
But it happens. But in everything that's good, there is always a part that manipulates that. But this is something for me that's not a bottleneck. This is something that could be faced.
I agree, and one of my favorite beliefs is that change the result first, and then the reasoning behind that. So yeah, as you say, things are changing. Some people are using it, for their own benefit, but I think in the end, the overall result is on the plus side. And one last thing, because we are talking about the INFINITECH project, which actually involves lots of big data, blockchain technology and stuff. One of the things that we see it's getting traction now is the DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, which is part of what you described. You mentioned the stewardship model as well. So I think that this is gonna be a thing, like a hot thing in the near future, because more and more people are going towards that direction, and it's it's a more democratized way, actually, for those who don't know this, democratized way to run a company, to run a project, and it can scale.
Exactly that. It's social. We say the phrase here in the Greek Social Innovation Center. We say the phrase socializing technology or democratizing technology for all people, for all citizens, making technology simpler and friendlier to the middle level of people, not the IT ones, because they know that one way or another. But for example, giving in a very conceivable way tools or machines or applications that my father can use or my grandmother can use, it's that point, that value.
Amazing, and thank you so much. I think we can keep this discussion for a long time, but it was a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for the presentation. I will say reach out to Dimitris for anything around these topics. He's a very knowledgeable person, and he can help you schedule and plan this accordingly. Thank you once again, Dimitris. We will continue with the pilots, and we will see how they tackle it.
Listen to you. I will stay here and listen to you because it looks very interesting to me. So I'm staying here to listen to the rest.
Perfect. So we will be waiting for your questions if you have them. Let's start with our first pilot, which is pilot 3. They're working on a project around collaborative customer-centric data analytics for the financial services, and they have a very important, actually, use case. I'm not gonna say more. I will let pilot projects to go on and explain us what they do. So Phil, are you the one who's gonna be presenting?
Neil will start and I'll wrap up.
Perfect. So the floor is yours, Neil, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I am just going to share my screen and hope that I do it effectively. Let's see if I can go to full screen. So at the moment, I think you can see the whole of my sidebar, yes?
Yeah.
Yes, you have the same issue so far as Dimitris.
Okay, sorry, I need to go back one. And now?
Yeah, it's the same issue as Dimitris. I guess maybe it's a Zoom thing.
Okay, let me. Still no good, no?
Just
Yeah,
use that.
we can see the bar on the left.
Okay, that's
We
very
should-
boring because it looks good on my screen. Display settings, let's just try that. No, it's not going to help me. Okay, I'm just going to roll with this, guys, if it's okay, as long as you can
Yes.
see what I can say.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Neil Giles. I'm the president of Traffic Analysis, which is a subset of the Stop the Traffic Anti-Human Trafficking NGO, which is based in the UK, but is a global organization. It's been our mission for the last 18 years to stop human trafficking in all of its forms across the world. My personal background is that I'm a law enforcement professional. My last job was as Deputy Director of our National Investigations Agency in the United Kingdom. And I left that work to join Stop the Traffic just over 10 years ago, but I was volunteering with Stop the Traffic prior to that. My mission to begin with was to try to bring a stronger understanding of the manifestation of human trafficking into law enforcement practice, which had a very poor footprint, a very poor understanding, both in the UK and globally in 2006-07, and to improve our prosecutorial statistics, frankly, to be able to bring more offenders for human trafficking to justice. I discovered that was a very tough thing to do, and that was largely because the size of the problem, which is depicted on this slide, is much bigger globally than justice processes can cope with. So the first learning for me back in 2010 was that the justice process wasn't big enough to eat this size of a problem, and that we needed to think about this slightly differently. And that's where our journey towards making this issue so transparent to every actor in every sector that it couldn't be ignored. It replicates much of the conversation that the previous speaker, Dimitris, was articulating. But I have to say, there's a very old English saying that you can take a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. And we began a journey over 10 years ago with bringing together the richest set of data from the issue of human trafficking for every actor in every sector to draw upon to enable them to do their business more effectively. And it was only partially successful. What we learned was that, particularly in finance sector, and I'll explain more in a moment, that just making data available for analysis does not take businesses further forward in bridging the gap between non-compliance with the kind of norms that we're looking to institute in business and finance practice. It doesn't make that happen fast enough. You can't make them do the research. They don't have the resources. They cannot interpret the data easily into their transaction monitoring and know your customer systems. So we needed to learn from that interaction as we went. But just to set the scene, The figure in the top left-hand corner, the $150 billion in terms of revenue, that's a 6-year-old statistic. It's more than $500 billion, I would wager with anyone on this call. Nearly 50 million people around the world are in circumstances we would describe as modern slavery or human trafficking as we sit and have this conversation today. And a proportion of those, a significant proportion of those are in commercial sexual exploitation. The vast majority are picking and packing food products, involved in food manufacturing of every variety, big fishing. They're on large agricultural product work, natural rubber, palm oil, you name it, those big industries are heavily engaged with it. The garment sector, the list is almost endless. And the only way we're going to change that is by understanding human trafficking as a market equation, not just a justice problem, not just a social issue. And what I've tried to do here is to come up with a very simple market analysis to help all of our participants understand how this issue affects everyday life. And I'm going to start bottom left, because traffickers don't have a business unless they can create and maintain demand for the products and services of people in exploitation. So if I have recruited 100 people that I'm going to transfer across borders to another country where there's a gap in the labor market, unless I've established that I can use those people and steal their wages, which is essentially what the model is, I don't have a business. There's no point in me recruiting those people unless I have a demand equation. Secondly, if I'm going to steal those wages, I need to be able to get access to that money. I need to be able to get it, use it, manage my people, have a profile of normal financial behavior as a business with the financial institutions that I interact with. So unless I get those two things, bottom left, top right, in place first, there's no point in recruiting anybody. So it follows that if we can use data in a way that reduces the opportunity to create demand and maintain it, but more importantly, takes the risk of losing the money or losing access to the money that I'm stealing from them in the finance process, then actually the business becomes much less attractive. It raises the risk of discovery to an unmanageable level for me as a trafficker. The last thing that's important to note, top left, if I'm an established trafficker, I will lose 1/5 of my workforce every year, and I need to recruit 1/5 of that workforce again. So just taking you back to that 50 million figure, essentially 10 million people a year are being recruited from vulnerable communities around the world to head into a life of exploitation. For some people, that doesn't last very long. That may be months, that may be a year, that may be 2 years. For many, it's a much longer experience than that. Traffic Analysis Hub began its life about 8 years ago as a way of bringing together in a logical way the stories of traffic victims around the world, and it is now the largest repository of those stories, classified, accessible, collected from a variety of sources, the most important of which are survivor debriefs, survivor narratives themselves, but it also is drawn from social media, RSS feeds, open source material, from a range of smart sources. And please excuse me, I have a dreadful cold. and brought together in a way that is highly accessible. And we did that and launched it publicly in 2019 in Washington, DC, launched by the United States Ambassador at Large for Human Trafficking. And we discovered very quickly that it didn't land as effectively as we needed it to, particularly with financial services businesses. And so this project, P3, has been a remarkable opportunity to take this material using AI and embed it inside financial industry transaction monitoring and know your customer systems, so that not only do existing typologies, how criminal groups who traffic people interact with financial systems in a scientific way, not only does it identify those that we know about, it's begun to identify those we didn't know about. And I can't overemphasize the potential for this kind of development for the financial services industry and for broader industry going forward. It has extraordinary potential. Cause and effect. I'm going to talk about workforces here particularly. I'm not talking about commercial sexual exploitation, but the same rules apply. Exploitation in workforces on a palm oil plantation in Malaysia, where there are several thousand families who have quotas that they cannot deliver without having their entire families, children too, out in the fields collecting palm oil for production. It actually devalues the business rather than helps the reputation and the profitability of that organization. It's a short-term profit bulge. It's not a long-term benefit for the industry. And it actually undermines the kind of worker innovation, the kind of worker investment in your business that all businesses need to become more effective, to become long-standing and benefit the society in which they're embedded. It actually depresses the local economy significantly because the workers don't have sufficient wages to invest in local infrastructure and local life. It's a significant drawback. It massively undermines competition. Three like businesses, one of whom that cheats, does nothing for the ability of that business sector other than undermine it. It becomes a race to the bottom. And we need to deliver businesses that actually are driving people further forward. It leads to generational poverty and dependency, and ultimately to broad market failure. And the output of this, the wastage of people, the broken people that there are, they become a public service dependency cost. And I've just put the UK figure in there. The victims of modern slavery in the United Kingdom are currently costing the state something like £4 billion a year to manage and maintain. So I've talked about broad market failure and public services costs. It also fuels corruption, both in the public and the private sector. And that's a significant implication for us going forward. And of course, it creates significant criminal funds. Let me just relate that to financial services. If as a very large business, let's take, for example, Unilever, I am buying multiple tons of palm oil for production in my factories in Europe. As soon as I do business with a palm oil producer in Malaysia that uses exploited labor and my check hits the bank, it's money laundering. And at the moment, the world of business does not recognize that risk. And we need to make that risk much clearer. Not only to business in the broad, but in particular to the financial services sector that simply process transactions from businesses of that stature without a second look. And it significantly overlaps with a variety of environmental harms. And you can draw a circle with a number of overlapping circles. So human trafficking overlaps with illicit timber work in our rainforests around the world, with illegal fishing, with wildlife crime, and the list goes on. It's a significant environmental harm. It's a tool to create environmental harm, and at the same time causes extensive collateral damage in the societies in which it's embedded. Where are the wins in this? And I would suggest that they are significant. In financial institutions, this is beginning to present the opportunity to very much faster know your customer outcomes, and the potential to escalate potentially errant customers for additional scrutiny. I think that's very important. But it gives a real fast track to anti-money laundering opportunities for banks and financial institutions more broadly. At the moment, if you look at the number of suspicious transaction reports or suspicious activity reports issued by banks to financial intelligence units in nation states, the number predicated on human trafficking are pitiful. And this is a fast track to massively increasing that and taking that into the law enforcement arena for investigation. That's an important step. And that disclosure process is a way to greater transparency. For anti-slavery NGOs, it's an incentive for them to contribute their knowledge to Traffic Analysis Hub or a like data platform to enable it to be ingested into transaction monitoring systems through a similar project to the INFINITECH P3 strand, because the more typologies we can identify, particularly those unknown typologies currently, the more chance we have that financial institutions will play a stronger role in reducing this crime type. And at the same time, that bleeds back to improve services for the victims of trafficking and less victims of trafficking as we go forward. So seeing that 50 million figure begin to reduce significantly in months and years to come. The opportunity for financial institutions to identify through this process networks of payments that identify trafficking rings, that identify people who are in traffic circumstances is immense. And as you do that and fast track those investigations into law enforcement, the opportunity to intervene and to safeguard those people who are at risk is huge. And bottom line, this is about reducing trafficking and exploitation, because that's good for business, that's good for the environment, and that's good for growing wealth in vulnerable communities so that they become more sustainable in their own right, rather than needing to be transported across borders to work for below wages or no wages in other economies. It has the potential to massively enhance economic growth in other parts of the world. That's it from me. Phil, over to you for anything that I may have missed.
Right, I'll share my screen. Can you see that?
Not at the moment.
No, not yet. Now, yes.
Coming
Yes.
along there.
Right.
Perfect.
Okay, so just to wrap up and to look at the Sustainable Development Goals that we hope Pilot 3 will help to achieve. Pilot 3, as Neil has said, is a machine learning or real-time producer of behavior typologies and combinations of behavior typologies that financial institutions can run in their own customer data in order to carry out AML and KYC checks. At the moment, it's being run within the small amount of data, a large amount for us, but a small percentage of the data in the Bank of Ireland. And we have applied 36 of our typology combinations within there, and it has had a 33%. So 12 of those typology combinations were unknown to the Bank of Ireland and have been unknown and helpful to the Bank of Ireland in spotting money launderers who are laundering by way of modern technology. The Bank of Ireland itself has added typologies, so the tool will produce its own typologies. The more data and the more behaviours that are added to the database, but the tool also allows the users to add typologies of their own. So the plan, the leader of Pilot 3 is the Banking Payments Federation of Ireland that has 100 financial institutions. So the plan would be, once the Bank of Ireland has fully used P3 tool, would be to make it available to 100 members of BPFI, which we hope will produce more and more typologies over the next year as they use it. And partway through that year, we will then make it available to financial institutions worldwide, and so on and so on. And so we then expect the number of typologies and if the number of typologies increases and the percentage stays the same at 33%, that will be an incredible result for us. We also had a look at the SDG and looked at the UN SDGs, and we really we are of the opinion that this tool really concentrates on two, which is SDG Goal 8, which is for decent work and economic growth. Removing slavery will give everybody a fair wage for fair work. The other thing we expect it to impact very much on is responsible consumption, SDG 12. If you are not buying anything that has not, if you are buying something that hasn't been produced with slavery, then it will impact on your responsible consumption and on the ethics of the people that are actually selling it. And the third one is that once we disrupt slavery and remove it, then that will empower the former slaves and people, which we expect to then lead to strong institutions and peace and justice for all, which is SDG 16. So they're the three main SDGs that we expect Pilot 3 to go some way towards meeting. And then obviously, once those three main ones are met, then the other SDGs will start to be produced in countries by way of a responsible government and justice within society. So that's where we are on Pilot 3. We have come a long way in a very short time, and the one last thing that I can say is that there is a plan within 2024 to take pilot 3 tool once it's been proven into another tool which will be producing court admissible evidence for law enforcement agencies and border agencies, so that prosecutions can start to take place using the P3 tool combined with other tools. Thank you very much. If you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you both. It's really interesting what you're doing, guys. And you know, it's I think Neil just explained all the different aspects. It's a very important topic, and you know, very good that you're working on this. Hopefully, the results will be there as soon as possible. I think you're already have, you know, some tangible results, which is, you know, very important, and this can only grow as far as you keep working on this. I know that you're working more typologies, like more on the technical side, which will help you identify more cases. Thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting. If there are any questions for pilot 3, let me know. If not, we will be here. You can write your questions on the chat below, and we will ask them on a later stage. Thank you also for presenting the SDGs and how you contribute to that. It was I didn't think about the SDG number 12, but it's actually, it makes so much sense there. And I think there are more things that you could touch upon, you know, if you dive into the subcategories of each one of the goals. In any case, thank you very much for the presentation, both you, Philip and Neil. And yeah, let's keep up the good work. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Dan.
Perfect. So let's move ahead with our next case study. It's actually pilot 4. They're working on a tool around personalized portfolio management, and we will have a chance to see some of their case studies and how they contribute to all these SDGs and in general the business ethics and goals. So I'm not sure who is gonna present for this. Is it you, Christian?
Yeah, it's gonna be me, and then I'll hand over to Roland for
Perfect.
the second part.
Fantastic.
All right, so I'll try and share my screen.
Let's try. Okay, there it is. Google Slides, guys. This is how they always work. Thank you. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Just to start off, pilots 4, as you just mentioned, Theo, goal is basically to democratize professional financial advisory services. And I'll start off by just talking about business ethics, and then I'll hand over to Roland. So 3 most important parts are transparency, regulatory components, and users agency. The crucial components for achieving a AI system that is trustworthy is, of course, traceability, explainability, and open communication about specific limitations of the AI system. Moving on to the regulatory components, pilot 4 and Privé, we work with licensed and trusted market data providers. And therefore, there are no personal identifiable information. Privé mostly cooperates with institutions such as banks, for example, that already have in place or are conform with GDPR and other such components. Exactly. And additionally, the other 2 companies that we work with in pilot 4 wanted us to mention that there's also no risk from the possible dual digital user onboarding system regarding data protection issues, as all the data is kept within the app on the user's mobile device. The AI system should act as an enabler for a more democratic and flourishing society, which should be underpinned by human oversight. Here, Privé, our pilot 4, promotes a hybrid approach where the AI is used as a help to select certain assets, but of course the user ultimately makes the decisions, and also the final portfolio decision is then basically decided by the user. But we have an example later on which Roland will show all of you. The developed solution in pilot 4 is exactly what I just mentioned, and where we will show you an example later on, where certain fitness factors, our investment targets, will be chosen by the user themselves. So I think I'll hand over to Roland now. We'll continue.
Yeah, thank you very much. Christian, can you share your screen, please? Or stay there, yeah. And then we try to, before we come to the detailed example, we try to, let's say, define a little bit how the SDGs in the classical 5 pillars of wealth management would fit in. And in wealth management, there is, let's say, from the theory side, there is those 5 pillars, which is spending, borrowing, saving, investing, and protecting. And of course, our pilot, as we are more targeting the like a private banking approach, it is mostly focusing then on investing and protecting part, where investing, of course, is for those investors or retail clients in the end who also want to take part in the capital markets and not only have some cash on some bank accounts. This is the investing part, while the protecting part is more the part where, for example, also some kind of life insurance or investment linked insurance products are affected, and there also, of course, any kind of SDG parameters can be set up as a precondition, or let's say as a requirement from each single investor's perspective. I think especially this part of this investing is exactly the core part where, and we see this all now with the upcoming or already existing regulations in connection with ESG investing, how good this movement now in the overall market has been developed, meaning that investments in ESG compliant products, and to that a little bit later, how good they performed and also raised additional assets in the past 2 to 3 years compared with, let's say, those assets or those investment products which do not take this so much into account. And the second part on this investing part is obviously how good any kind of financial institution, if it's a bank or a broker or an insurance company, can fulfill the asset owners, meaning the retail clients' perspectives or targets. Meaning if this investor says, okay, I really want to make sure that 100% of my investment is following strictly all ESG criteria, then exactly these financial institutions need to make sure, and this is also right now a regulatory must, that this is not only once to be done, meaning in the beginning of the investment, like today when we invest, but it is to be checked nearly on an annual basis now, meaning if we invest today, then next November 23, these advisors or financial or asset managers need to check and also report to their clients if they are still fulfilling all the ESG requirements the client has defined, or if some changes have been taken place because some companies where the investment went into change their business strategy and these kind of things. Okay, next slide, please. Now in detail, In the end, one of the targets here from the text side on the left-hand side of the slide, the target of the pilot in general is that a much broader audience has access to a private banking-like portfolio construction and portfolio optimization solution. Because we all see this in the end globally, but also in Europe, especially also, that let's say if you come to a bank with let's say 200, 300, 400,000 euro, then you get a certain service. Yeah? But if you come to the same bank only with 10 or 20,000 euros, then you just get a standardized portfolio where, to be honest, partially nobody cares if this portfolio fits your interest or not. It may fit then your risk profiling, yeah, because this is also, again, the regulatory must, but to have there a kind of a really personalized portfolio construction procedure, it is in most cases not existing. And therefore, the approach of Pilot 4 is to establish such a system so that it makes it possible for the banks or other financial intermediaries to offer this kind of service also to the people with the, let's call it, the smaller budgets, yeah, to give them a kind of a high net worth individuals experience, but only with their initial investment, which may be not so high. And this is also a way out, as Christian already mentioned, to democratize these professional financial advisory services for much more people than it is right now. Here numbers, international studies show that less than, let's say, 30% or even much less of the investments globally is managed professionally. And therefore, we want to have this as one of the targets, which in our point of view is also quite a positive societal impact, which is as well also one of the SDGs, SDG goals. Out of the 17 goals, I think we identified, but this is of course open for discussion. Let's say 8 are the most relevant for this part. You see on the right-hand side, investing and saving. This is on the one hand side, of course, any kind of energy consumption, is industry, innovation, infrastructure, investments. Right now in everybody's discussion, especially also with the Ukraine-Russian, let's call it, gas crisis, besides the war effects. And then, of course, any kind of development towards sustainable cities and communities. Climate action, I think, is the most prominent part, which is anyway already implemented in many of the investment products. Water, life on land, peace, justice, and of course, any kind for partnerships for these goals. And the overall topic is, and this is, I think, we need to consider, is that this shall be hyper-personalized, meaning that really each and every single investor can select which of these goals, if all of them or only one of them, is the most relevant ones for him or for her personally, and how should this be reflected in any kind of investment decision. Next slide, please. Yeah, then let's have a quick view how this all what we discussed now in theory could look like on a real customer example, which went live earlier this year with one of the biggest asset managers in the German-speaking area, with HDI Insurance Group, with Talanx Asset Manager. And there you see how this is in the end implemented here. At first, customers need to define their own risk score to learn about, okay, how big the risk appetite of this single customer is. Is it a more conservative one who really wants to have a steady growth, but not so much deviations during crisis like we have now in 2022? Or is it also more, let's say, with more risk appetite, where any kind of decision can be driven also by the factor that there is also a year or two where you make then 20-30% loss, but then will recover most probably in the coming 2 to 3 years again. As we have seen after Corona, the loss was quite a short-term loss only, and within 3 to 6 months, in the end, all the losses have been regained again. Yeah. And this is here one of the first steps. Next slide, please. Then you have, of course, any kind of questions. Here's only one of the examples that customers are really asked for, how sustainable they would like to see their investment with. They can do it preferred, they can do it 100%. There, of course, it's mainly a mathematical operation. You can also split this up in 2 or 3 more iterations here. Here, the decision was that it should be only preferred, which means then more than 50% or even 100%, or it's neutral. Then let's say other factors from the portfolio selection criterion are then having the first place. Next slide, please. I mentioned also this hyper-personalization approach that we really allow customers to understand better where they are investing in. Yeah, because most of the retail investors are not so experienced with all the terminologies in financial industry, and if a product has a certain name, in many cases you don't know exactly where these investments, these investment funds, ETFs or structured products is investing in, or even with equity in partially it's not so easy to find out where this company is active. And therefore we followed the approach to make this more in an understandable way, let's say also more easy to explain, that those investors can really choose what they want to do. Here, this is one screenshot where they choose in which region of the world they want to invest primarily in, which is the more preferred ones and which is the more, let's say, neutral ones, which is only then as the placeholder for investments, where also, let's say, like with global products, some parts of the world are anyway there, but in the end, those parts which are preferred should be then overweighted compared with the other parts. Next slide, please. Yeah, and the same approach here is if we try to show how investment preferences, also in the understanding of customers, can be chosen here. Yeah? Meaning we had here several topics where for this asset management company, it was interesting to give customers a choice. Like here we marked environmental protection in general or renewable energy, but you also see with the not green marked areas like water or infrastructure, that those topics where typically investors have a view on that, have an opinion on that, if they want to invest there in technology or if they don't want to invest there. And that's also a little bit of guidance to enable in the end customers who have not so detailed experience with financial products, to give them the chance to structure their portfolio based on their expectations and on their preferences. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, and last but not least, and I think this is then the final slide, if I see this correctly, is in the end how this is then also in the end reported back to the customer. This is also, I think, one of the key parts of also following the SDG criteria in general, to create the highest level of transparency which is possible. And this is again here then that all the selections which the customer made are once again summarized in a summary where you then see, okay, here we selected 100% sustainability. We did not do a special product selection, which or you did, or in which kind of products, funds, ETFs, stocks, bonds, or whatever you want. Then we have selected the regions where we mainly want to invest, or this customer wants to invest, and then the investment themes, the topics where the investments also should go by a higher weighting than normal investments is selected. And yeah, core satellite, we did not select anything, and so that gives the customer a good overview if he wants to choose exactly these kind of preferences, or if he wants to change, then he can go back again, and then an investment proposal will be prepared by the asset manager based on these assumptions, where then again it is shown exactly, okay, if these preferences, if these parameters which have been predefined are fulfilled or not. Yeah, I think this should give you a quick impression and short introduction what was realized in this real life use case based also on with these SDG goals. Yeah, and if there is any question, happy to answer them, of course. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roland. Thank you, Christian, for this. If I may ask, just here, when you ask the end users to pick, their sustainability level of whatever they want to invest in, do you get this information from big like rating markets such as, I don't know, Morningstar or something like that, or how do you define how sustainable is each one of those investments?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Thanks for that, and I did not mention it. My point. No, that's one of the drivers in the industry now, because there is no single source. To be honest, that's one of the challenges in the whole industry. Not only for us, but I think for everybody. But let's say, as always with such regulatory approaches, offerings from different market participants, content providers mainly. Christian mentioned in the beginning that we are not ourselves a content provider. We are taking content from so-called trustworthy sources. And there is many of them right now, like Morningstar does this for the investment funds. It's let's say it's world's biggest content and data provider for investment fund data. MSCI, for example, is doing this for equities quite extensively already. Then you have on the bond data side, on the fixed income side, you have, for example, Moody's as one of the most prominent rating agencies who established their new business chain within their offering. But in general, this is exactly one of the challenges. We are, as a solution provider, we need to be open to all of these content providers, because what we see with these first projects, all the institutions, the big banks, the big insurance companies, they all have already their data providers. Yeah, there it's not on a solution provider like Privé or like anybody else to bring them the data. They have it in-house. They have licensed it from their existing data providers, or they have licensed it from some new ones, because there's also some specialized ones for ESG data, for example. And we expect this to happen in the next, let's say, in the next 1 to 3 years, that there will be a kind of a standard definitions for the different asset classes, because this is not yet in place here, that in the end, all data providers who want to provide data based on partially own methodology, like Morningstar made an own methodology development for how they rate products as sustainable or not, or as SDG compliant or not. Or if they say, okay, I go to a market standard, which is then in most cases mainly also a little bit defined by the regulatory authorities, so that they have then a kind of a minimum level which is defined, but in the end that will be a kind of let's call it a moving target in the next 1 to 3 years, because it's right now developing the whole offerings here. And therefore we need to be flexible in terms of how to implement it. But secondly, and I think this is the definitely, if not most important, but also a very much important point, is to have then the transparency. Meaning, if then somebody rates a certain equity or a certain bond instrument or a certain mutual fund as ESG compliant, it must be possible to know why this was the decision, that this is compliant or not. Because this is, I think, as it always will happen with companies, yeah, meaning in European Union, we have this discussion right now in these days, is now nuclear energy, is this now sustainable or not under these taxonomy definitions? Yeah, we had, especially this year, that will change from time to time. I think this will be also a little bit a political discussion always, and therefore you anyway need to be on a flexible data model here, because maybe what we are discussing this year may completely change or partially change already next year. Yeah? And I think this is what we need to expect and where we need to be prepared for. Yeah?
100% agree. I think things are going towards that. Hopefully, we will get some more consensus around this. I think it's a very hard question. And as Dimitris actually mentioned in the beginning, this has to do with all this reporting and how you understand, what your business does, so you can report this to the corresponding organizations, and then you can use that as an add-on for the services. But yes, thank you for the presentation. Oops. I don't know if you can hear me now. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
I moved my mic. Thank you guys, and keep up the good work. Let's see how this evolves. I think it's a very interesting tool, and I'm talking for for the Greek region at least. We don't have something similar, so it's a well-needed product, and especially if you see that countries like the UK, for example, is well far ahead on this, and they have multiple choices that you can choose from. Unfortunately, it's not everywhere like this. So hopefully, we will be using your product, for our personal use, and we can support all this. I have a concern around all the SDGs that you mentioned there. It's as you said, up to discussion how exactly you support. But I think as a general level, it makes sense. The more flexibility you give to these personalized investments, it makes sense that because you support all these different goals from your point of view. So thank you once again. Dimitris, do you have any question on?
No, I'm listening with a big percentage of interest in the last case. I think that I can imagine pathways for establishing that to the Greek context. I'm searching for the alternatives because this would be of great interest, not only for the ministry, I mean for the observatories and all the chambers and things like that, for the Greek reality.
It's a tough discussion, and yes.
Let us know when you need some help from our side, or let's say typically it's always a kind of let's start a kind of together with a financial institution, a kind of prototyping, yeah, because as always in these kind of things there is no that's not a mathematical formula where everybody has the same result. That's all a question of definitions. Sometimes a matter of taste, a little bit also. Sometimes a matter of priorities, of course. And I think this is exactly what shall also this kind of activity show here. Yeah?
Yes, exactly. Hopefully things will get better across all regions, across all countries. It can be global. And once we are there, I think this actually is a catalyst to go help all these businesses that are doing their best to contribute to the goals. Thank you once again. Thank you, Dimitris, as well. So let's move to the next one, and we have another very interesting pilot here. This is the pilot 5B, as we call it. So they're working around the business financial management tools. Eleni?
Sorry for the interruption, but
yes,
as we have another call at 4, can we please jump in and present our case first? If it's okay with pilot 5, of course.
I think we should be fine. We have like 25 minutes, and you should be fine to be according to the schedule.
Okay. However, at 4 o'clock we really must go. Okay.
It's gonna be quick, Eleni. I'm gonna be over in 5-8 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. So just introduction, we have Dimitris Kotios with us. They're working on a business financial management tool, and he will be presenting how this works, what it is, and how you contribute to all these things that we're discussing today. So Dimitris, the floor is yours. Let's see if your presentation works.
Thanks all the previous speakers as well. It was really interesting, getting more deeper in that kind of, topics. Let me share a bit everything and tell me if you can. It's okay?
Perfect. Yes.
Great, perfect. So to give you in the beginning an overview of our pilot, we are working, our team from University of Piraeus, we're working with Bank of Cyprus to provide a business financial management toolkit, aiming mainly at the small, medium-sized enterprises. Now that toolkit would contain various different components that would be like cash flow prediction, transaction categorization, benchmarking, and many, many more that all combined would create a smart virtual advisor that mainly aims to assist the SME in order to take more financial management decisions and provide, of course, more personalized insights and alerts. Now, for the business model, we have drafted with the bank, the main end, of course, the DOA. The main segment would be SMEs, but the bank is planning later on to refine the offerings and offer it to more legal entities than now. The main problem, as mentioned before, is the liquidity, and that is a major challenge for most SMEs, especially in that disruptive environment we have, with crises and energy costs and everything. And the main channel for that would be Genius. Now, that would be a digital platform aimed from the bank. It is already operating with more than 1,500 users. And the main focus would be the invoice processing and connecting SMEs with suppliers. Now, of course, the bank is not that innovative. It's not something that it's done for the first time. There are many fintechs trying, to tackle the bank's offerings and try to offer data analytics, mainly, however, focusing on historical data and not easily combining all the available data. Now, the bank, being the trusted bank of most users, on top of their core business banking, they provide additional services aiming, and having a more holistic approach than the other offerings. Now, to go a bit, to the point of the workshop regarding the ethical impact, what we are trying to achieve, especially with the invoices processing feature, to increase the transparency between transactions having to do with the suppliers or other customers of the SME. Now, by utilizing, actually the offering is going to be available via smartphone and to everyone, all the SMEs. So we really hope that the BFM solution, it's going to reduce the bias and broaden the accessibility. So if saying, for example, an SME user who is not that digital aware, he can access his phone and know more about what transactions he made, and of course predictions about what he's going to spend or have any liquidity issues. Now, unfortunately, we don't have Silvio, my partner from the bank, but the UI and the whole pilot is going to be offered and implemented within the Bank of Cyprus environment. So the code of ethics of the bank, let's say, wrap around all the offering we're having and we're preparing. That would be have to do with professionalism, innovation, integrity, reliability, and collaboration with the bank and the users and shareholders. Now, for the impact we're having to society and the environment, well, SMEs are the backbone of every economy in Europe and in the world, because, for example, some statistics, 97% of our business operating in Europe are SMEs. So you can imagine that's directly connected to the society well-being and the growth of the whole economy. Now, by the offerings we are providing, we really hope that the SMEs are gonna manage their financials better, so they will gonna have less liquidity issues and perhaps better performance. Moreover, the way we are providing with the UX we are preparing, we really hope to increase the digital awareness and skill acquisition of perhaps older users that are experimenting with our offerings. And we really believe that that holistic approach is really going to provide useful business insights for them. Now, for the environmental, as it is not directly connected with our pilot and our offerings, we really hope that, they're going to need less paper to print or go visit their bank and then consume less fuel. Now, regarding to the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, the most relevant ones would be number 8, decent work and economic growth, and especially target 8.10, where we strengthen the capacity of domestic financial institutions to encourage expand banking and financial services. And we could say that it's also connected to reduce inequality, as it's going to be available for everyone. And as it was mentioned in Pilot 4, we wouldn't care if they have, they have a lot of, let's say, financial activity in the bank, or it's like they have many deposits in the bank, but the whole algorithms are going to be personalized and be working for everyone, the same. I think it took less than 8 minutes, Eleni. Thank you for your attention, and we're here to discuss further if you'd like.
Thank you, Dimitris. It's quite interesting to see how everything could fit, potentially in just supporting in every way you can. Just you mentioned, for example, the environmental space. It makes so much sense that you digitize many of these processes that happen today manually, and by using tools that are not needed, I will say, anymore. So it's very important to see how we can fix some of these, especially in Greece and Cyprus. I don't know for the rest of the countries, but we have some process that could be updated and modernized in order to fix a few of these things.
The point is that banks already have the available data. Just being informed about your transaction, your historical transactions in our new era, I don't think it's enough. I mean, all the banks, it's pretty easy with all the R&D expenses they have, to offer more, let's say, personalized insights and combine different data sources to provide something that could really add value to the SME.
Yes, I agree. It's very important to see how we can support as well. Like, it's an outside of the banks. You're working directly with one of those, but anyone. I mean, there are organizations that can support, and this is what we're trying to build here. Dimitris, do you have? Mr. Panopoulos. Yes.
Yeah, interesting enough, I would say. I have a question that springs to my mind all the time regarding this issue. If I understood it correct, Dimitris, this works for banks and customers I think in the most 99 of 10%, 97% are SMEs, correct?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. I have this issue that is being indicated here in the Greek context. Is there have you ever thought, or maybe in Cyprus there is not such an issue, is there any issue raised about the privacy of the enterprise data regarding a possible leak to another? For example, we have many small SMEs saying regarding small grants and things like that, or in the investment bank, that they say that I'm afraid that my data could be leaked through something to the other competitors. And I'm just wondering, how do you approach this safety / privacy?
Yeah. No, that's a well-put question. At least for the development process, all the data we received, the Bank of Cyprus were really careful not to leak or give us any personal or sensitive information. No, so for the whole development process, all the data we're getting are anonymized. So we have no clear indication, who the user were, and we could not track it at any level. Now, what you mentioned for us would be like a competitive advantage, like the fear of the people that their data being leaked. When a new fintech comes and tells you, pass me all your transactional data, and I'm gonna help you provide insights. You don't have the guarantee of a new startup, what they are gonna do with your data, or how safe they are. Now, for the bank, it's like for the bank it's the easiest knows everything about you, right? So we believe that if we pass data to that, the whole system is working within the bank. So once everything is fully operated, even as the developers, we are gonna be easily, just to maintenance or add a new feature. But we'll never get any clear feature who the actual users are. So it's up to the bank, but I think they already have pretty high standards, regarding.
Yeah, I mostly meant that if you are thinking of developing such a tool to promote this digital trust we were discussing before, because there is some in Greece, at least, and for the small employers or the small enterprises, there is indeed an issue of digital trust in this. Maybe this could be solved through NFTs, for example, I say, or through some mechanism, but this is something when transmitting or upscaling to Greece, this is something that I think, could help you take into consideration above towards creating digital trust, digital clarity. Not, I mean physical, I mean the digital one.
Yeah, indeed, you're right. But to be honest, within the pilot, we did not, we just granted that the digital verification of the user and the whole security is up to the bank or the whole, INFINITECH ecosystem and other partners developing technologies having to do with that.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dimitris, and the rest of the team who couldn't join us today. Really appreciate your presentation. So let's move with our last pilot for today, the last pilot of cluster 2, and this is pilot 6. With they're operating on a personalized closed loop investment portfolio management tools for retail customers, and we have with us Eleni Perdikouri
and Gina Prokopaki. We are from the same lab. Yes.
Perfect.
Hi,
Yes.
hi everyone. Apologies,
Hi,
I need
both.
to go a bit fast because I only have a few minutes before next call. So let us share
fine.
a bit the presentation.
What is it? Just give me a second to share my screen. Can you see the presentation?
It's loading, and we should be able to see it. Still loading.
That's not good.
You want to try once again? Just stop it
Yes.
and restart. It's the same issue. I don't know what's happening today.
I don't know, we're from the office and maybe we have an internet problem. I don't know.
In principle, due to the weather, potentially there are a lot of technical issues.
Please stop sharing your screen and try again. Maybe sometimes we need more time for the bandwidth to cooperate with us.
Okay, I stop it, so I'm going to share it again.
No, unfortunately not. I'm trying at the same time to see if I can share it from my side.
No.
Yes, yes, please.
It's loading on my side as well. Okay. Let me share my screen. Here. Is it
Perfect.
full screen?
Not yet. It's
It's
loading.
still loading. We just saw the first slide.
Okay, now it should be there.
Not yet.
Yes, it's due to the weather. Now it's
Okay.
loaded. Yeah.
Yeah, it's loaded.
Can you see it?
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Whenever
Good.
you're ready.
Now, In pilot 6 now we have actually implemented, and we're about to operationalize, to be quite honest and accurate, a personalized portfolio management mechanism in order to capture customer needs, and actually by leveraging several customer data sets, target also to the non-affluent customers, and this way have better investment recommendations, increase trading volumes, and have, of course, enhanced productivity and increase customer experience. So if you could move please to slide number 3. So in this pilot, as you can see, there are several partners participating apart from National Bank of Greece. So the general point started by gathering all the data, cleaning the data, anonymizing, and actually putting them into a specific shape within the data layer. And afterwards, applying advanced analytics and AI in order to create the recommendation engine. At this time point, and after applying also the business logic behind all this, which is actually really important in order to state, we are creating a UI from where the financial advisor that is going actually to have hold of this is going to be able to see several details per customer and be able to be close to the customer and have actually the knowledge of the further recommendation to be shared. If we could go to the next screen, we can see the indicative actually figures. I think you missed one. Anyways, in the first slide, in the first screen, the financial advisor is able to see customer details. So the basic information on customer level, as well as the assets that the particular customer had already in possession. In the second screen, there is also the analysis where, sorry, I think we've moved.
No, he has the previous version. That's not the correct
okay,
one.
this is not the correct version. Anyways, so in the second screen, actually, the financial advisor can see some pies related to investment history, while in the third one, he has the ability to see actually the recommendations for the particular customer. Now, in this case, the event is actually improving banking investment recommendations. The need is creating tailor-made personalized propositions per customer, while the solution is actually offering opportunities to wider audience and democratize bank services. Now, the main principles followed by the organization is alignment. So everything is aligned in terms of business strategy. When it comes to impact and target settings, of course, both increase the positive impact and reduce the negative one. For customers, we focus on customer prosperity, of course, and customer satisfaction. While for financial advisors, this is actually putting them into a state where the customers are trusting them, and they're actually becoming more consulting through the personalized propositions. If we focus now on 3 different dimensions, we have the retail customer, where, as we said, we focus on customer prosperity, and we managed to give us also this privilege to non-affluent customers, where actually this was only applied in the past to them. For the investment, the financial advisor, it's actually providing the most suitable, the right investment recommendations to the appropriate customers. So increasing productivity, upgrading, and through innovation, be able to becoming more trustworthy. And for the bank, of course, customer experience and customer loyalty, increasing these two, is actually achieved by capturing most effectively each customer needs. If If we go now and focus on the Sustainable Development Goals, we can see that number 8 and 9 are actually the one where Pilot 6 is aiming. So decent work and economic growth, as well as industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Now, the organization is promoting actually sustainable economic growth. Is actually diversity and innovation upgrading for economic productivity, as well as universal access banking, insurance, and financial services. So these are the 3 pylons where we can see that we have a common point of view in point number 8. While if we move to industry, innovation, and infrastructure, I think that's the part where we discussed previously that we are actually developing this whole solution through by utilizing new technologies, as well as the part of innovation, which is focusing to covering the needs of all customers, regardless of their status, is actually folding up and wrapping up everything related to this part. So this is from our side, and thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm sorry for, I had the old version in the beginning, but I think now that was all right at the end. So yes, as you described, you're focusing on mainly 2 SDGs, and I think it makes so much sense to, you know, as one pilot previously, the idea is to help build the infrastructure and then support all this economic growth through different ways. The way you do that, we didn't see that presentation there, but the idea is that, again, you support all the end users and your investment analysts to make better investment decisions, which can support through you know, your part, your vision and your knowledge actually around the industry, how someone can be more sustainable when they start their investment journey. I know you are a bit late, but if we have one question, I think we have time for one question only. Is there something that you would like to ask to Pilot 6? Anyone? If not, okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you for presenting.
Thank you. And just to mention that it's very good that you showed, you demonstrated the 3 screens created by Crowd Policy. And thank you very much for the cooperation. I think that in the future, we will be able eventually to roll out this to the financial advisors and start gathering feedback to move on to the next one.
Yes, that's fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us. I would like to thank you all once again. And just as a reminder, this is a recorded video, so you will have a chance to see it later on and understand a bit more about each one of the pilots. Very warm thank you once again for Mr. Dimitris Panopoulos for joining us and giving us this nice introduction. I think we can, you know, keep discussing on this. There are so many different things that we can work on together, all together, and this is the goal of Horizon projects as well. Make sure that we create a community and we build towards a more sustainable future. So thank you all for joining us. I wish you all a great afternoon, and stay tuned. We have more of this coming up very soon. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.